Welcome to the Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast. In this enlightening episode, we dive into the evolving world of the automotive industry with our esteemed guest, Alex Schaeffer, General Manager of Direct-to-Consumer Vehicle Sales at Ruby Car, part of Avis Budget Group. Alongside hosts Andreas, Wieman, and Tim Keefe, we explore the significant changes, challenges, and the future trajectory of automotive retail and customer experience.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast again. I'm here with my co-host Tim, and I'm going to let you do the honors of introducing our guest Alex.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And so today we are honored really to have an expert in the automotive industry to share some thinking on an industry that's going through a lot of dramatic change. So today we have Alex Schaeffer, and he's the General Manager of Direct-to-Consumer Vehicle Sales for Ruby Car, part of Avis Budget Group. Alex and I have had the privilege of working together, well, privilege for me anyway, maybe a pain in the ass for Alex, but for the last year and a half or so. And it's been, I think I've really enjoyed working with him. And I think that some of the conversations we've had, I really see you as a thought leader in the industry, Alex. So with that, Andreas, maybe you kick off the whole, and we'll put the lights on and bring out the electrical probes, and we can have an opening conversation with Alex.
Yeah, no, it sounds good, and appreciate you being able to join us, Alex. And just given your expertise and experience in the automotive industry, what are your thoughts on where you think we're headed, or at least where we should be headed there?
Yeah, well, hey, Tim, Andreas, thanks for having me. Appreciate the intro. Looking forward to digging in here. Look, I think, the reality is customer experience is a never-ending journey. Expectations keep changing, and businesses, like ours and all the others, keep trying to, iterate and over-deliver. The challenge is automotive is complex. It is not a simple process, right? There's lots of, regulatory environments, there's tensions between OEMs and retailers. And at the end of the day, the customer experience has to be strung together to again, deliver on the expectations of the consumer who's really in charge of this whole thing with their wallet.
Yeah. Well, and it's fascinating too, because again, looking over the last 4 or 5 years, we had that, kind of really interesting boom with the surge in used car prices. Original manufacturing slowed down because of the chip shortage, created this kind of interesting space. And now, of course, when we look at cars, which I think are fascinating, I know I'm showing my age here, but the idea that the average price of a new car is $48,000 US, and you're like, wow. I mean, so, not to say that a car wasn't always a significant purchase, but now you're like, this is like, you're getting to the price of what used to be a house in some cases. Now I'm really dating myself, but yeah.
The pandemic that we just came out of changed things. Some things for good, some things were, things that might normalize over time. But yeah, pricing is an interesting one, Tim. The average price now between a new and a used car is around $20,000. That's double what it was. I think that might come back and normalize over time, but it's significant. And along with that comes heightened expectations, right? The consumers expect more when they're paying more.
Right.
So, it's a journey to try to catch up to that expectation.
Yeah. And I think something you said, one in the opening, and again, just kind of hit back on now, and this is true, I think, for a lot of industries, but specifically for automotive and just retail in general. If you look at what I call the environmental complexities that we're facing right now, there is so many changing kind of, I'm going to call them headwinds right now, because I don't think anybody's really figured it out. And refocusing on the consumer and what are their purchase habits, and what are the things that are important to them to be able to drive this, just centricity back to customer experience. And so what do you think about some of the things that you've seen, you have visibility into, that are starting to get the customer brought in to refocus, and then also just kind of change from an industry standard that's been, I want to say stagnant, but I can't think of like a better adjective, pre-COVID, what are some of the adoptions that you're seeing customers are receiving very warmly that you think is going to be more of a trend moving forward, and the trailblazers that hitch their wagon to these focuses or these efforts are going to see improvements quicker?
Yeah, good question, Andreas. I think easier said than done, but the organizations that make it easy for a consumer are the ones that will win. And that's not as easy as it sounds, right? The reality is every customer is different, right? Some want a highly branded, journey. I'll call it like, the Tesla journey that is super focused around the product. And the consumer is obsessed with that. And that's what they want to go through. Others don't want anything to do with that. They want to deal with their local business down the street. They're obsessed with their trade-in and think it's highly valuable. And that is an entirely different journey to solve for. But in many cases, it's the same rooftop or the same, organization that's trying to sell the consumer, right? So, the organizations at the end of the day that put the consumer in control and let them go through their journey as frictionless as possible are really the ones that will win.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I think, I think it's interesting you bring it up.
Sorry, hey, Tim, sorry. Just for the record, when I asked that question, which took me about 10 minutes to ask too, Tim texted me and he said, "Hey, I want you to ask this really complicated, long-winded question to Alex and see how he responds." So just want to make sure that's on record.
How'd I do, Tim?
That was, you did fine. You did fine.
Appreciate
I would expect nothing but extraordinary. No, I was, before I got cut off by my friend here, and former friend anyway, I was thinking about, as you talk about that, every customer is different, right? The day of trying to even put them in buckets becomes really difficult. We just have to deal with the who that we have in front of us. And, I think about, even some of the other projects we work on is this whole thing of like a customer engages. What do you do right at that first point of engagement, right? And there's that, I'm a new customer, I'm an existing customer. And if I'm an existing customer, obviously we need to authenticate them. But at that point, we should know them, right? We should know them, their history, and the path that they've been on at this point. And then I think it's really interesting is like, how do we, and this is going to be a really interesting tool for some of the generative AI stuff, which says, okay, what are the transaction points for this customer that tell us, to your point, is this is a brand obsessed customer? Is this a cost obsessed customer? Is this a capabilities, for lack of a better term? They're really focused on, I need a quarter ton or a half ton pickup truck, right? So that's what I need. I'm not brand specific, but I'm capability specific versus, hey, I need a car that can transport 5 people to get me to BART, and it's a 10-mile ride, and it's going to sit in the parking lot all week. So I don't really care. It's a beater. Then there's the whole thing, quick and available, right? Like, can I get it today versus it's going to be 2 weeks, which is what people are dealing with. So, when you say, how do you get the customer in control? What would that look like for you? What's that journey?
Yeah. So before I get into it, the challenge before you even engage with the consumer is the industry for decades has created anxiety and resistance for a consumer to even reach out, right? Because they know as soon as they fill out that form fill on the website or they make a phone call to you, they're going to get blasted with information that, may be too much, maybe overkill. And the lack of transparency in the industry has just created a huge amount of anxiety, even to this day. And distrust, right? So when that consumer does finally engage and reach out, you have to know that going in. And my point of view is you have to meet them at a human level and start to understand their passion points and where their tension points are. A consumer, whether they reach out to you digitally, over the phone or in the store, you got to quickly get to know them and allow them to do things on their terms. And that's, how it goes with, speed of the transaction, understanding if they, lease a vehicle every 18 to 24 months and they understand the process like a pro, or if this is their first time they're buying a car and they have no clue how the process is going to go. And how you would handle that journey is going to be very different. And you might be selling the same product.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's key. And Tim, you and I talk about this a lot, and it's funny, Alex. Not a lot of people use the same adjective of anxiety, anxiousness that I used a lot too, and that's exactly what it is. And so, if you can get the angst deflated and get it down to a more personable and comfortable is the other adjective I use on the opposite end there as an antonym, right? If they get more comfortable, then you're going to have more transparency and trust and equity moving forward to have sales conversion, right? Sales made, but the interaction is going to feel more authentic. And I think to your point, even before they reach the point of sale, what information is out there for us to start building these customer profiles to start getting some form of personalization, at least attempted and started. And I think that helps with the conduciveness of the just the conversation and the interaction. That's where you're going to get, there's so much data that's generated from interactions today that I think just sits in a lake in case there's a lawsuit 20 years from now or some case like that, right? But there's so much valuableness in that data that's being generated that we can turn around for good, for our customers and for employees, as a matter of fact. So, well, anyways, I think that was a really key point you brought up.
I think it's, think about pulling all of because we record all these transactions, right? Whether they're digital or oral, and often transcribe them. So you have this huge data lake, to your point, of these interactions, right? And there's been different products over the years that want to give you sentiment and a word cloud on the most common issue brought up. But I've never seen one of those reports really drive actionable change. And they're always, customer sentiment is neutral. Across a broader sample, of course, it's going to be neutral, right? That's just the nature of it. And then the word cloud stuff doesn't help from an actionable perspective. So, one of the things that we look at with clients is like, okay, you have all this data. Now, what do we want to do with it to help create, to your point, Alex, understanding the customer in a way where we can reduce the friction for them around whatever path they're on or whatever journey or whatever off-ramp they're on. Like, as we've seen in the past, I remember doing a project and we were all like, that's never going to happen, or we're going to put these things in the wings and we're not going to worry about them. And then guess what happens? Those things that we thought were going to be 5% of the volume are turning out to be 30% of the volume. And then, what do you do about that? And how actionable and proactive it can be. But so one of the things that I wanted to say first off is that we're only going to do the audio recording, but in Alex's background, of course, he has on his bookshelf the best-selling, internationally recognized business guidelines for stop doing stupid stuff. So thank you, Alex, for that branding on that. Really appreciate the product placement here. This is well done.
Glad you noticed that, Tim. That was for you.
Yeah, I look forward to the dinner in response. So Alex, we like to keep these things relatively short, but we really appreciate your input on this. As we leave this, if you were going to say one thing, like if you were on top of the mountain and you had a wand for the industry as a whole, what would be the one thing you think they need to do first as we go down this transactional or this transformational change?
Yeah, so I think Andreas touched on it. It really is leveraging data. That is the big, I think, game changer for automotive, all around, not just on new or used vehicle sales, but also on the ownership cycle. We have, millions of data points, and it's relatively easy to start capturing them, putting them into a lake or a customer data platform, a CDP, but actioning them is what's hard. And you can, our team thinks of thousands of journeys that we can, improve or create with that data. But you really have to prioritize that. You really have to stay focused on the number one value unlock for both the consumer and the retailer, and that's time. You have to use the data to find creative ways to reduce how long it takes tasks to be done, however you want to define it, and let the consumer move at their speed. And on an average, that expectation is going up, whether it's digital or in the store. And you can make that journey, personalized. You can, do things like pre-fill or eliminate forms. And that's really powerful, right? And
Right.
some of the tech leaders like Apple and Google have shown that it can be done, and consumers love it. And I think automotive, the automotive space needs to learn from that and just continue iterating to reduce that friction.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, the struggle in the industry is, like you said earlier, it's not just controllable in the industry like within tech. There's a lot you can do. You guys are bound by, a lot of regulatory environment. By the way, are different state to state to state, even in some cases city to city. So, but given that, I think you're right. And I think it's very exciting to think about that, optimizing the data, really leveraging it to create the right journeys for the right people at the right time. And we'd love to get you on a panel. We've got some other people in the group that we've been working with, and one person actually is in New York. And not to do a little shout out for Gabby Steele and Prequel, but they were on our podcast a couple of weeks ago, and they have a very interesting approach to data optimization. And I think we're getting excited about that in our space as we think about customer and employee experience optimization. So, Alex, I really, really thank you for being here. You are, incredibly smart and knowledgeable in your space, and hopefully I get to see you in the next week when I'm up in New York. But anything you want to leave us with?
No, just thanks for putting this together. I think it's an interesting space. There's a lot to learn here for both, rookies to the industry as well as veterans. So appreciate you doing what you're doing. Keep up the good fight.
All right.
Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. And with that, Andreas, you want to close this out?
Well, I think it was a great session, great talking points. Tim, like always, does most of the talking and fills up most of the time, but good nonetheless. So, Alex, we appreciate having you on, bud, and hope everybody gives us a few comments and ideas for topics in the future or leaders that you want to hear from. So we appreciate it, everybody. Take care.